Hello, I'm Krupa, this is Chris, and you're watching The Superhero Show, a weekly roundup of all the kind of superhero nonsense on IGN. This week we're going to be talking about Green Lantern, but before we get to that and the news, we've got something quite interesting to talk about.
Something really exciting, haven't we?
It's massively exciting.
For us, maybe not for you.
Yeah, you probably don't even care. Like, this is very indulgent.
Yeah, Daniel and I have fulfilled lifelong ambitions. Yeah. We have been turned into action figures.
Yeah.
To tie in with Captain America, the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, so should we rewind? Like, we were approached saying, would you like to be turned into an action figure? And we, after a kind of a second of hesitation, were like, yeah, that is something I would very much like. So how did they do it?
Well, we have a video that shows it. Rich, do you want to run the VT? I've come down to the studio today to be turned into an action figure. I was given the choice of Captain America or the Winter Soldier, and I'm going to be the Winter Soldier. And my colleague Daniel is going to be Captain America, so our action figures can have fights against each other.
There's 64 cameras around me, I think, and I've just been captured, and I'm going to be replicated in little diminutive form as an action figure for the first time. This is kind of realising a childhood ambition of becoming an action figure. I have an insane amount of action figures for a grown man. They're not action figures, they're high quality collectibles, and it's all for Captain America, which is a great film.
Yeah, so that was it. I guess we were photographed, I think it was 64 cameras or something.
It's the same technology they used in The Matrix to do bullet time.
Yep.
That's my hand gesture for bullet time.
Yep.
That's internationally recognised.
And it was kind of weird seeing the back of your head on screen. I didn't really like that, especially seeing how bald I'm starting to go. But should we get the results out?
Yes.
Here are our little fellas.
What are we doing? Okay.
There you go. That is the Winter Soldier.
Look at my little tiny head.
That is the balding Winter Soldier. And
that's Captain America. Definitely my body. So,
yeah.
But he's got a little tiny head. I think they scaled down my head after fears of it being top heavy.
Right.
Because I do have quite a large head.
And I've got quite a small head, actually.
Yeah. So put them side by side?
Yeah. Your one's slightly taller than my one. It's quite accurate in that way. But yeah, we're very pleased with them. I made a note. If you want to find out how you could do it yourself, it's my3dtwin.com. Anyone can go there. It's about 120 quid for the small ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can have yourself made up. You can have your mates made up.
Or your dog.
Your dog. A lot of people get their dog made up.
Yeah.
But where do you think we should store these?
I think on the shelf.
Yeah. Can't reach now.
Do it later.
All right, we'll do it later. Should we talk about the news?
Yeah, let's get back on track. You've got the first news story, as always.
Yeah, a bit of fun, this one, really. But Captain America Winter Soldier came out in the UK last week. It's out in the States this weekend and the rest of the globe. And interestingly, there's been regional differences between different versions of the movie.
It's Captain Britain over here.
The scene in which Cap is kind of trying to pick up on the cultural touchstones that he's missed.
He's catching up, isn't he?
He's been in the deep freeze, and he has a little pen and paper when Falcon suggests some...
an album, isn't it?
It's a Marvin Gaye album, yeah. And you see the list very briefly. Well, it's different depending on what country you're in. So let me just quickly run through what the American one says.
Okay.
I Love Lucy, Moon Landings, Berlin Wall, Steve Jobs, Pisco, Thai Food, Star Wars Trek, Nirvana, Rocky, and Trouble Man, which is the Marvin Gaye one.
Right, okay.
Do you know what Pisco is?
I assumed that said disco.
No. Oh, it's disco. You have to bleep that out.
Leave that in.
I looked it up. I thought it was Pisco and it was a great brandy. That's embarrassing. Right,
what's on the British one?
The British one. TV show Sherlock, Moon Landing, The Beatles, the World Cup Final, 66, Sean Connery, Thai Food, Star Wars Trek, Nirvana, Rocky 2 and Trouble Man. So yeah, a couple of differences. We got Connery, World Cup and Sherlock. And the Beatles.
I think Sherlock reference might date a little bit.
It's weird, that one, isn't it? Compared to I Love Lucy.
Who is recommending him that he should go watch the 66 World Cup final? I don't know. I think that's veering into like pandering to a British audience.
Yeah. Well,
I would have been fine with just the American list. It makes more sense. He's in America. He's American.
If you're going to talk about pandering, do you want to hear what's on the Australian list? AC/DC, Steve Irwin, Tim Tams, and Skippy the Bush Kangaroo. Which, as we put in an IGN article, a show that a vast majority of Americans have never even heard of.
Well,
why not America?
Why not? Sort it out, America.
Google Skippy. Amazing theme tune as well. And
it's like Flipper.
South Korea has got former Man United player Ji-Sun Park, Old Boy, and Dance Dance Revolution.
Again, who's recommending this stuff to him? It doesn't make any sense.
This is all a bit ridiculous. But if you're in a country that we haven't mentioned, and your list is different, do write in and tell us what it says, because we should compile a list of all of them.
I think it's important to know all the things that he has to catch up on.
Tim Tams.
Tim Tams. Steve Irwin.
Right.
Moving on. Next story, which we're going to talk about more at length, is it's a very brief quote, but David S. Goyer, the guy who helped Nolan write the Dark Knight trilogy, script it out, plot it, and he also helped write Man of Steel last year with Zack Snyder, has said, speaking of the future of the DC universe, that he would love to have a go at Green Lantern as a character. And they asked him about Man of Steel and the way they depict Krypton. It's very alien. And obviously that ties in with Green Lantern, because that embraces an alien world within the DC universe. And he talks about, at the heart of Superman, there's always been a science fiction story, and I wanted to lean into that, and so did Chris, and so did Zach. So I'm just glad we were able to do that. So he's kind of showing interest in the science fiction elements of the DC universe, and he name-checked Green Lantern. So what we wanted to talk about for the talking point this week was, is David S. Goyer the guy to take on Green Lantern? And could you reboot Green Lantern in a kind of appealing way, even though the Ryan Reynolds film kind of flopped just a few years ago?
Yeah. Well, I think Goyer, as long as it's together with Nolan, in Nolan we trust, I think.
Yeah. Are you still a bit sceptical about how much Nolan is still involved in these kind of productions, or whether they're trading a little bit on his name, which obviously has a lot of...
I feel like he was quite involved with Man of Steel. I really do. But isn't he pulling back a little bit on Batman versus Superman?
He wants to go off and do his own things more and more.
Yeah. But I think if it's in conjunction with Nolan, I'm more interested. I'm not sure if I trust Goyer when he's off on his own, because he's
made some turkeys.
Yeah.
He did Blade Trinity, didn't he?
Yeah. I believe so, yeah. So that's a bit dodgy. As for recasting, I think that's something they're going to have to do. And it's weird, because I don't think Ryan Reynolds was that bad in the role, and I like him as an actor.
I think he's got a lot of star power.
For some reason, it just didn't work. And it happens sometimes. Like, one of the best actors around these days is George Clooney, and yet he was a bad Batman.
In a bad film.
In a bad film, but he was still a bad Batman. I remember being so excited when they cast him. He was the coolest actor on TV. And I thought he was going to be the best Batman yet, and he was the worst.
So it was wrong time, wrong place for Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, so I think it's important to recast him, and I guess they've got the plate full making Batman and Superman work alongside Wonder Woman as well, because you'd think that would probably be the next spin-off. But then, what are your thoughts, Dan?
I feel like it's an obstacle. It's an obstacle they've made for themselves. Like, obviously, in an ideal world, Green Lantern a couple of years ago was a huge success, and they could have very easily then spun him up into the shared DC universe. Even though it would have been tricky, because tonally, Man of Steel went somewhere very different from Green Lantern. There would have been a little bit of a disconnect that you would have had to have settled in, like a compromising tone in the crossover movie. But I feel we still haven't seen anything about the new Batman and where they're going to go with that. I think that really puts us, a flag in the ground and says we're going in this direction. I think, DC is going in this more sober way. I think you can easily reboot Green Lantern in that universe now, because I think it's so different from the tone of that Martin Campbell film.
Sure.
Will they do it? Because we're talking about WB investigating another DC character outside of Superman and Batman. I think they'll probably go new first. I think they'll go Flash before Flash or some other character before they go to Green Lantern again, just because it's probably a little bit of a bad taste in people's mouths still.
Or might they introduce him as part of a Justice League movie after Batman vs Superman?
Well,
might that be a way of dipping their toes back in the water?
I suppose it's obviously we get told off a lot when we talk about Marvel too much on this show, but obviously this show is mainly centered on the kind of film adaptations of these comics, and you have to admit Marvel have been incredibly successful. And if you look at what they've experienced of late, is they really struggled with the Hulk character. They didn't know what to do with him, had a few films, didn't really take off. Some of them were critically panned years afterwards, and they worked him into an ensemble film. So maybe, like you're saying, just introduce him when the JLA comes around, and that's when Goyer will get his crack at the Green Lantern, is in an ensemble piece and maybe a flashback, something like that. But maybe he's not interesting enough character, but maybe it's a harder character to adapt for the big screen.
Yeah, I think the concept deserves another go, though.
Yeah.
just another.
But the thing is with Green Lantern, there's so much machinery to him. It's not just that one character; it's the whole Lantern Corps. And to introduce all that as a supporting character is tricky. So you want to like trim back a lot of that extra story because there's so much exposition to the Green Lantern. I think that's one of the reasons that their first film kind of suffered a bit.
Yeah,
so there's so much. It's not a simple, streamlined origin story. It's not like childhood tragedy. It's like you're suddenly this fish out of water story in space, and then you have to somehow get him back to Earth for there to be some kind of danger. There's a lot to sort out quite quickly.
But I think it's doable. That's my opinion. Okay. We got some feedback though that kind of ties in a little bit. It's from Liam Crossley, who asked, do you think Man of Steel provided a good starting ground for Warner Brothers to patiently build a cinematic universe similar to the one Marvel has impressively built? Or do you think there were some major problems with the film in regards to setting it up for future movies?
We have to put Dark Knight aside. This was the first one, I think, in a new... It's the first step towards a shared DC universe. And they obviously mark out a particular tone and where they're going to treat these characters, treat them in a more kind of serious way. Unlike the Marvel movies, they didn't lay any real pipe work for the characters. I know there's a brief glimpse of a Wayne Industries sign on a satellite, but it almost felt like they held back a little bit on seeding other characters, which I think the Marvel movies have been always really good at, is laying groundwork. So when another character comes in, it isn't like, whoa, who are they? It's like you've already known them briefly from the previous film. What do you think?
I like the fact that it left stuff out, though, that's still to come. Like, we had no real Clark Kent action. I think it'd be really interesting to explore the Clark Kent character in the next movie. I mean, I quite enjoyed Man of Steel. I know that it had kind of real mixed reception, but...
But do you think it's harder to like bring in those other characters?
No, I think they had a lot. They still had quite a lot to do.
I suppose they had to relaunch the Superman character in many ways.
Yeah, and they took the decision to spend quite a lot of time on Krypton, which I thought was cool. It was something different that we hadn't previously explored in you know, the Donner movie and the previous films, or that, you know, gone that in depth on it. So no, I thought it was a really way of kicking things off. But I think.
And you never know, like, because they've established Krypton and a kind of new look for that alien world. They might use that in future films as the backstory for, if you want to reintroduce the Green Lantern, you somehow spin it out from a bit of the DC universe now is familiar on the big screen. Yeah. Perhaps.
Yeah, will be interesting.
Yeah, so the next bit of feedback comes from Andrew Brock. He's got a more general question. What Marvel and DC character would you most like to see get a movie that hasn't already had one or been rumoured to have one? So I guess Doctor Strange and Black Panther. Yeah. So someone entirely new that we haven't really heard too much about.
Yeah, well, I've thinking about that question beforehand. Captain Marvel would be one for me. Okay. Because I grew up on Captain Marvel a bit. It was my dad's favourite superhero, Billy Batson. And so, yeah, there's been talk about it. Dwayne Johnson seems to have talked about it a few times through the years. But it's never really got off the ground. But I think that's a really cool DC character that would be really interesting to explore. The fact that it's a little boy as well that turns into a superhero is something we haven't really seen.
No, so yeah, Banana Man.
So yeah, I'm all about that one. How about yourself?
I think either Aquaman or Namor from Marvel. So either one for similar reasons, just to see the kind of underwater world. I think that's a power we haven't really seen yet on the big screen. You've seen a lot of like firepower, like a lot of mutants. To see something like kind of slightly more mystical underwater kind of ancient kingdom sort of thing, I think you could take it in interesting ways. Make it even a disaster movie if you wanted, like out at sea on a cruise liner.
Roland Emmerich to direct.
Or does that sound terrible? That might actually sound terrible. Anyway, I want to see that.
Yeah, sounds good. And finally, I've got the last piece of feedback. Comes from Marius Merton in Germany. A little bit critical of us. He says, I just wanted to speak about the comments that the coming Batman vs Superman movie is getting on your show. Oh, he's not happy about it either.
Rich, the poltergeist is back.
Funny enough, it was a Superman book that fell down. You say things like people go see it because of it's a bit of a train wreck factor and other very negative stuff like that. I think that's weird to say of a movie that hasn't released anything except forecasting choices and hasn't even started filming yet. Which is probably fair enough.
In our defence, I think we were maybe using that description to describe an audience in general. I think you and I have been kind of indifferent or kind of a bit more objective. We were quite positive about the casting of Eisenberg.
Yeah, I don't really like the actress that's been cast as Wonder Woman. That's just how I feel. I don't think she's a very good actress in the Fast and Furious movies. And And I don't think we were the only ones who weren't that impressed with Affleck.
Yeah.
But I'm totally... Like, I'm
Right.
waiting to see what
we
he
should
does.
retain more kind of neutrality until we see something from it.
But we're here to speculate.
Yeah.
It'd be really boring.
Also,
if
we
didn't-
change opinion every week.
Yeah, we do.
Come back next week, we'll love it.
I'm changing opinion on X-Men Days of Future
By
Past
the minute.
on a pretty much every second basis. But Maris goes on, as a big DC fan who also loves Marvel, I'm getting a bit tired of the flack that DC is getting from you and the internet in general. I know rooting for Marvel is even easier when you can trash DC, but that's really unfair. We're not really trying to trash DC, but we didn't like Green Lantern. We've just kind of been quite positive about Man of Steel.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of wait and see. The thing is, Marvel are churning out really good movies. So
And they're doing it at a rate, like, the thing is, they're up and running.
Yeah.
And they're so dominant. That could change in the next 3 to 4 years, but they were just quicker off the mark.
yeah.
And they've got some amazing directors and writers to get involved. So they're kind of... This show really concentrates on what's happening in Hollywood and on TV in relation to superheroes. It's not so much the comics and stuff, but... yeah, Marvel are just like the industry leaders right now, but that could all change.
No, so we just need DC to get up and running and making more movies, basically.
Yeah. But as always, we'd love to hear from you. Anything you want to say, you can contact us on Twitter. You're at...
Tilly tweets.
I'm at Krupa, or email. Can you remember what the email is, Chris?
No, I'm not really.
Rich, just put it up on screen. Cool.
Cool. Thanks for watching and tune in next week for more superhero action.